If you're interested in graphic design, you will definitely need to learn and master these two software, Photoshop and Illustrator. Why only these two software? Well, not that other software are not important, but depending on your design discipline you are in, if you do print media, then you probably would have to look at InDesign as well, and Quad Express or even some proprietary industry app. But if you need to work on videos, then After Effects, Adobe Premiere Pro would be the power tools. If you're working on UI UX and then you want to look at XD, so that would be the thing. But no matter what graphic design discipline you are in, you cannot run away from Photoshop and Illustrator. Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator actually came a long way. Even before internet came about, they're already kicking ass in the media industry. There have been many challenges over the last 30 years, but they still reign supreme, even today. So every 1 to 2 years, Adobe will release a version update with some new and improved features. However, the interface and workflow still remain pretty much the same. So let me show you what I mean by this. So you can see that these were the earlier versions. You can see there's this thin panel called toolbar on the left side with a bunch of tools represented by icons. So usually on the right side or the bottom part, in these screenshots you can see there are actually a few function panels, brush and color picker panels. Then we have this layer panel somewhere near the right side. Now let's flip through the versions until the one that we have today. Other than having a few more tools, icons because of the new features that they added in, you can see they are generally the same from 30 years ago. What about Illustrator? Let's look at Illustrator now also. These are the first few versions, which the first one was released in 1987 in the first Macintosh. So you can see the same thing, the thin tools panel on the left with the tools icons look kind of similar to Photoshop, right? But they are slightly different since this is Illustrator. And then a few versions later, okay, we can see that a few function panels, color pickers start to come in, and then we have the layer panel on the right, just like Photoshop. So this consistency being kept between these two software even over the years, what it means for users like us. It means that we do not need to relearn every new versions, as well as the learning curve becomes much easier to pick out between one another if you want to switch between Photoshop and Illustrator. This is actually a very good UX practice example that we all definitely can learn from. Okay, my approach is slightly different from other teachers. Okay, I will start by introducing both together to show their similarities and then how they differ from each other. I want you to see both of them just as different tools in your toolbox and then learn to use the right tool to do the right job. And another good news is we are not going to cover everything because you do not need to learn every single tool to be able to do pretty impressive work. We'll start by looking through the basic important tools and the workflow. So without much wait, let's dive in. So in Photoshop, when we open an image file, and this is the working space where we do our magic. Okay, you can open a few files at the same time, okay, but at one time you can only work on one single file. So to work on the next file, you actually have to select the particular file first and then do something to it. That is the canvas. Okay, the latest Photoshop version actually added in this thing called artboards. Okay, so we can work on a few different artwork in the same Photoshop file at the same time. But I don't really have the luxury of this state-of-the-art computer machine. So I find it very sluggish after putting in like 10 layers and if I have like 10 artboards open up, which is actually very common. This is just my personal preference, but don't let me stop you from using artboard. It is definitely a great feature. You can use it if you prefer to. But managing all assets in one single file is actually very, very neat. Just that if something happened to that particular Photoshop file, okay, all your work will be gone. So good luck to you. So on the left side of the app, you can see that there's this particular row of the tools that when you mouse over there's this tooltip to tell you what is it about. So this is the toolbar. If it's not there, it's probably someone have accidentally closed it. So that is where if you close it, you can actually toggle it off here or on here. Okay, it'll just come back. So this is where the tools is. And then on the right side, you have the color panel. You have the swatches, gradient and patterns, and these are pretty much the colors and the style that you want to use. Then following on that, then you have these property panels where Depending on the object that you select, it will show you what property you're working on at that time. Then we have the layers panel, layers, channels, and path panel. So let's go through the tools a little bit. The first tool is actually the move tool. That is probably by default you're set to this move tool. That's where you select an item and then you can just drag it around. So that's move tool. The second one is called the rectangle marquee tool, or I call it selection tool. This is probably the tool that you will use the most. For example, if I want to select this camera, okay, and I want to do something to it, I can just select and I can move it around. And if I need to just cut it off, I can just copy by pressing Ctrl+C or Command+C on Mac. Or I can simply hold on to Command key and then just drag it around and it will just flow. So that is what the selection tool is for. What about if I don't want to use this rectangle selection? I want to use some shape. Simply press and hold on this with your mouse button and then scroll to the one that you want to have. For example, this elliptical marquee tool, or I'll just call it oval selection tool. So you can draw an oval shape or simply press on shift so that it's locked, the axis locked, it becomes a complete circle. Then just shift it to the place that you want. You can use Ctrl+C or Command+C to copy it, or simply press on to this Command key or Control key to drag it around. So you'll have your selection tool there. Alright, so that is our selection tool. Or if you want to be more creative, you want to use some special shape, okay, you can use this third tool called the lasso tool. Lasso tool lets you draw up the shape roughly. You won't be able to do it very perfectly unless you have a very steady hand, which I have not met anyone with such hand before. So you can draw any irregular shape, and then same thing, you can copy or you can simply just drag it around and or cut it up like that. So that is called the lasso tool. The next one is Magic Wand. Magic Wand let us select area with same colors, okay, and it save our time. For example, we have this irregular shape mountain across this Milky Way, beautiful Milky Way galaxy picture, okay, and we just want to select the part that we have the black color. Then you just click on it. Whatever the closest color that link together, you will actually all be selected. That's called Magic Wand. Then the next tool we have is actually the crop tool. Crop tool let you crop the image size. Sometimes you just want to do a quick crop, and then you just use this crop tool and then just crop it off. Double click and you crop off the image. That's a crop tool. And then this one, I'll skip it. The next tool is actually this thing called eyedropper tool. It's actually for you to pick the color of the picture. For example, I want this orange color. I just bring it to somewhere near here and then I just click on it. So as you can see, my selection become orange color. This it's not orange actually, it's actually light yellow or something. So that's how you pick a color. You can choose any color that in the picture, even this dark purple color or lighter gray, as you can see when I click and hold on, drag onto it. So it will just change accordingly. So that is what eyedropper tool is. Is it eyedropper? That is what eyedropper tool is about. Then next one is actually this brush that almost everybody that start Photoshop will get excited with this brush. There's brush, there's pencils and stuff. So let's show you with brush. Brush, when you click on this brush, you can actually change the thickness here or change the effect, the hardness. I want it to be harder. Then I want it to be, the size to be slightly smaller. Then I can just draw whatever to it and maybe set the opacity to high and change this to, let's say, red color. Then after I'm happy with the selection and pick the color that I want, I can simply just do whatever and draw on the picture itself. Alright, so that's brush tool for you. Or usually we don't use it that way. We will simply just want to pick certain color using this eyedropper tool. Maybe you want to extend this, make it brighter a bit. So you will use this brush and then make it really big. Not big enough. Yeah, that's big. Okay, then extend out a little bit and make it, that's too much. Yeah, maybe just a little bit, turning on. And we use that a lot to fix for example, people like me have the face is a lot of acne and then you want to fix that, then you probably can use some of this, the brush tool. So, and another one, the perfect tool is actually this thing called clone tool, clone stamp tool. So how to use the clone tool? Okay, when you select the clone tool, you probably got to choose the size that you want it to be. And then for example, I want to remove this dot and I find that it's very dirty. So I zoom in, okay, then I simply press and hold alternate key. Then I just want to take it off here and just brush it off. So you just duplicate whatever that is here that I select. So I can do this again, copy here and then duplicate whatever that is here. Or I can simply remove some of the star if I find that there's too many stars. Yeah, so that is what clone tool is about. And then you have the eraser tool where you'll just erase whatever to the background color that you have. And then the gradient tool. Gradient tool is actually very useful. For example, in this picture, I want to put some text on top. So I want to have the gradient cover up from the top. So I can simply just use the gradient tool and then have it. Okay, it's on white. So I can choose the basic gradient. I want it to, instead of go from foreground to background, I want it to go from foreground to transparent. Okay, I can have a slight gradient tool in that sense. Of course, I can have some rainbow or whatever if I really want to do that kind of design. Alright, then you have the blur tool, which will take the certain part and then blur it, and the sharpening tool. Smudge tool is the tool that you can actually use this to smudge the stuff. Okay, that is what the smudge tool is about. You just follow just like wet paint and then use your finger to smudge around. So that's what smudge tool does. And this exposure or dodge tool is actually for you to change the exposure part of the certain part of the picture. So sometimes you find that this part is actually too dark, you want it to brighten up, so you can actually brighten up using this dodge tool. And burn tool makes it darker. That's what burn means. Photoshop does come with a few vector tools. So for example, this pen tool let you draw a vector shape in Photoshop. Basic, very basic vector shape. Okay, then so that you can have this thing called path. Okay, you'll generate a path, then you can manipulate the path. The next tool that we are looking at is actually this text tool. You can drop a text there as well. So when you drop a text there, it generates this a new text layer and simply put majestic Milky Way. So you can manipulate it, you can change it to I want it to be much bigger. Not big enough, maybe 200, because this picture is actually quite big and this font doesn't have the punch. So I can choose the font that I want, maybe this font, and maybe change the color to something. No, doesn't go. Yeah, maybe this. So enter, and that will select it. I can actually use the move tool to shift it around that to put at the place that I want. So that's how you drop a text tool. Okay, and the next one is actually path selection tool. This is a selection tool for path, just like this. The one that we just looked at earlier is actually a selection tool for raster graphics or pixel graphics. Because Photoshop started with raster graphics. So to select raster graphics, you need to draw certain shape or certain part of the thing and then you want to do a copy or something. But for this vector is different because they are actually objects, so you can actually simply point on the part that you want to select and then you can actually shift it around. So that's what vector tool is. Or I can just change the point by click and hold on this and then to bring up the hidden menu. Then I can choose this direct selection tool and then just drag it around. So I can manipulate and change the point as well and even change the curve if I want. So that is what this direct selection tool is about. It's for vector. If I want to draw basic shapes like this, rectangle, rounded rectangle tool, I can, or even an ellipse shape or triangle or polygon or whatever. Let's say I want to put a button here. I can simply use this tool and create a button here. So what it does is generate this rounded rectangle tool when I can simply, let me zoom in and then just drag this edge, change the corner, the radius, and then I can even change the fill, the color, change to this red. and usually we'll just drop a text here, says click me or whatever. Okay, let's put it to white color. Let's make it look really like button. It's ugly. Alright. So now at least it looks like it's a button. Okay, so they are all independent layers. We'll come to that later. So the last tool that we want to look at is this zoom tools. So zoom tool, when you click on it, it's actually magnifying glass. You click on it to zoom in. Okay, as you notice that just now when I zoom in and out, I wasn't using that because I was using this shortcut key. So shortcut key is, for example, when you're in this magnifying glass, this zoom in, you can see that it's actually plus now. Okay, when you click and hold your option key or alternate key on PC, option key on Mac, okay, then you can actually zoom out. And then to zoom in, just simply let go and you can zoom in. Okay, that is what the toolbar is about. So on the right side, we have this color panel. You realize that I can actually pick certain colors that I want from here as well. Or the property tool, depending on the thing that I select. You see, when I select this text tool, text layer, click me. So this property panel becomes text, and it can let me change and manipulate the font type, the layout, the paragraph, and then align left or right or center, whatever, everything that the font attribute have. So you just let me manipulate that. If I click it on this rounded rectangle, the vector layer, okay, vector layer for these buttons, so it let me change the property of this button instead. So that is what this property panel is about. And then another thing is this adjustment thing. I can play around with it. For example, I want to change the entire color for this whole picture together with everything. So it simply generate this layer, this effect layer, that whatever that is below it, you actually just change and then affect the thing. So this is how generally Photoshop works. So let's switch over to Illustrator and look at the similarity. Okay, when you open up Illustrator, I just opened a few files, dummy files for you. There's this toolbar, you can see on the left side as well, but it's slightly different from Photoshop that we just seen because this is vector based. So in Illustrator, everything is vector based. Of course, you can put in raster image or some picture that I can simply show you how. If I want to drag in this, I can simply just drop the picture in here as well. So it actually works as well. Yeah, but it treats everything as an object. For example, we are in this selection tool now by default. Everything here that constructed this picture is actually an object itself. So I just draw this earlier. Let me undo this and put back together. So even this raster graphic is treated as one object by itself. So I can manipulate it just like a vector tool. I want to put it in the background. Okay, I can bring the layer, the object, because it's object, so I can actually stack it, depends on which one that I want it to come to the front or the back. So I want to put this arrangement, just send it to the back. And I want to put it inside this frame. So select this and then make clipping mask, make it together. So that's how you can actually manipulate vector graphics. Then this second tool is actually this direct selection tool, which means that I want to select just this point. I want to change this point to here. I can simply drag the edge or drag this, or even this, all this shape that I can change. Let me just lock this and then I can, yep, okay. So you can see I can actually manipulate and drag the edge. I can drag the point using this direct selection tool. So to allow me to select certain part of the thing. For example, if I just want to select this part of the points, I can simply just draw. So you can see that it actually just select this part. It doesn't touch this part. It doesn't touch here. It doesn't touch whatever at the bottom. So with this selection on, I can use this direct selection tool and then just simply manipulate the part that I select and then just drag it off. So that's how it works. The next one is actually this pen tool. Pen tool let us draw shapes. You can click on the next point, then you just drag on, or you can simply click and drag and you will actually call this arc that you can simply decide how curvy you want it to be. But if you don't, okay, you simply just click here, whatever, that you'll just form a polygonal shape depending, join all the points together that you click. So the next one is actually the same as the pen tool, but it simply is auto up, which means that when I click on it, okay, and I click on the next point, instead of you see when I want to click on the third point, instead of go straight line, it actually forms an arc automatically for us. So when I click on here, when I click here, and as you can see, it just forms a beautiful curve, and it's definitely more natural. So you guys are more creative than me, so you will find a use on this. Then the next one that we will use a lot for Illustrator is this text tool. The default way is simply to click on it and then simply to type in, put in the text, whatever that you want to have. So the next one is actually this text box. You can simply just drop a text box that it actually have this confine the space. So whatever that is too long, you'll just simply limit to it. Let me just zoom in for you. So if I just drag, I can change this, how the text flow. And right now it just filled with dummy text. So Illustrator just dump in some dummy text automatically for us. And then you can do your whatever, align right, align center, or you want it to justify. Everything is here. Then of course all these property panels you can change the font type, change the font size, and everything is here. The next one is this line tool. Line tool, simply click and then you click and then just drag, and so you'll just go to the next and form one straight line. So that's what line tool is. Then the next one that we look at is this simple shape tool. So you start with rectangle tool, where you can draw rectangle, whatever shape that you want, depending on the color that you want to select. Okay, you just fill in whatever things that you select. Okay, and you can change, of course, draw these rounded edges as well, and also change the radius for the border. Or you can simply just draw an ellipse tool, or full complete nice circle, or simple drop a polygonal shape. This is hexagonal shape. Or you can just click and drop on it and then change the side to maybe a pentagon. So that's a pentagon shape. Then brush tool. Brush tool is for you to draw just like Photoshop. You can actually draw whatever, doodle whatever. You can select different brush and then have a different effect to it. So as you can see, oh, this is pretty cool. So it just automatically, it's like some free-form brush. Very nice. Okay, we won't be touching this view. Rotation. Rotate tool means that if I'm selecting this, I can simply just rotate it using this, and then just rotate around, or have all this selected. Then rotation tool will rotate everything together. So that's rotational tool. And scale tool, let me scale up all this together. If I don't press and hold shift, and this is what is going to happen, it becomes wacky. So if I press and hold shift, I can simply just drag up and down, or if I'm too close to the edge, you just snap to the axis. So if I press and hold shift and click, yeah. Okay, the next tool is actually the gradient tool. When you click on gradient, and automatically you can actually use this gradient selection and simply just drag and drop the certain stuff. And then of course you can change the color of this selection. Double click on this, change it to this. Then maybe I want to drop another color here. And the last one, I want it to be really more. As you notice that by default, Illustrator will set you CMYK, because CMYK is actually meant for print. So Illustrator is actually more for print, to be honest. But it's a tool that we use to draw shapes and logos, because it's vector, which means that I can actually blow out whatever shapes, whatever design that I have, as big as a building or even a jumbo jack. It will still appear very, very sharp. That is the beauty of vector graphics. But it can't do this. If it's raster graphics, it won't be able to handle much, except then by masking it off and just hide it behind or something. It can't manipulate raster graphics. To edit the raster graphic, just like what we did in Photoshop, you have to go back to Photoshop to do it. Okay, so eyedropper tool to pick the color of whatever that you have, then it will just appear in this. Let me just bring this up. So you can see this purple and drag onto this. You can even select gradient if it's vector gradient that we have. And even this gray color. The next one I want to look at is this artboard tool. Artboard tool is actually originally started in Illustrator and InDesign. So because you work on print, so the paper size or the media size is kind of fixed. So it makes sense to work on artboard in Illustrator, and one file you definitely will have a few artboard. Because it's vector, so the way that the computer handle it is very different from your raster graphics in Photoshop. Okay, and it's more common that we use artboard here. For example, this is set in a US paper size. I can set in another artboard and then change the property to maybe A4 size, and then have it set in A4 size, and then I can work on it. So I can simply click on this and shift the artboard around. Whatever that is in the artboard or touch the artboard, you actually simply move with the artboard together. So you got to watch out where you place the artboard. And then the last tool that we have is actually this zoom. So same thing, click. By default, when you select this, it's actually zoom in. So when you press and hold Option key, alternate key, exactly the same as Photoshop. This is their similarity. You click and then it zoom out. As you can see, the two software actually, although one is for vector and one is for raster, it's actually interlinked. It's actually very good. So you can actually see the beauty of it. So of course, Illustrator, you also have the layering. So the layers, you can create a layer and work on different layer. So exactly the same as Photoshop also, but it's meant for vector. So just take note that if for vector graphics, you want to work on vector graphics and then meant for print, work on Illustrator. If you want to design logo and work on Illustrator, use Illustrator to do it. But Photoshop, say Photoshop for pictures and stuff. For example, these pictures, use Photoshop to do it. Pictures like this, use Photoshop to do it. Pictures like this, you want to manipulate, I want to change the color of the pool to green color, whatever, I can do it easily in Photoshop. But Illustrator won't be able to do this. So I hope that you find this helpful. So you can see that it's actually the similarity and then the slight differences between the two software, and then now you know that when to use which. So if you like my video, please click like and subscribe to Uncle Teach You channel. See you in the next video.